listening to Xposed Living, Be Ageless, the podcast where we drop the masks, flip the script, and talk real life, real love, and real leadership unfiltered. I'm Stacey Vanthuyne, coach, speaker, entrepreneur, and founder of the Xposed Living movement that's redefining what it means to live, lead, and grow at any age. We talk identity, reinvention, belief, and freedom from the bedroom to the boardroom. Yes, we go there. This is not about staying young. This is about waking up. So if you're done with the shoulds and craving more fun, more freedom, more truth, more you, then grab your favorite drink, your bestie, maybe your journal. It's time. Let's get exposed. Welcome back to Xposed Living. I'm your host, Stacey Vanthuyne, and today this one feels personal because there's a moment, and if you're Gen X, you know this moment, where life looks good on paper, career built, responsibilities handled, you've done what you're supposed to do. Check, check. And then this quiet question starts creeping in. Is this it? What's next? And do I still matter? And a lot of people don't say it out loud, but they feel it. So today we're talking about that space. I'm joined by Tracey Thomson, also known as Coach T, who works with Gen X blue-collared workers navigating that exact crossroads. Her work is about purpose, planning, identity, connection. And her message is simple but powerful. Refire and rewire, do not retire. So Tracey, let's go there. How are you?
I am great.
Awesome. Well, I am so excited for this conversation. I want to start where the introduction ended. What's the moment you see people hit where everything should be good, but isn't necessarily?
You know what it is? And it's a bit of a surprise because it's the moment that we've all waited for. It's that one that we've anticipated, that exit, whether it was planned or not planned. But they've been sitting there in their meetings at their company for years, put their hand up saying, okay, the next round of layoffs, pick me, pick me. And this was my husband, and he was given the package and looked forward to it for so long. But then when it came, now what? It was like, I've waited for this, but I don't know what to do with it. Mm-hmm. They've waited for the freedom, and now that they've got the freedom, they don't know what to do with it. And then the question becomes, holy crap, now what? They have that moment, right? That's where it begins for them.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm curious, in your life, have you had that moment?
Back in 2003. We go back, way back. 2003, I was working corporate, and I actually had that moment myself. Yes, indeed. I was given a surprise package. I was called into a meeting first thing in the morning. They slid an envelope across the table to me and said, as of 8 o'clock this morning, your position is now become redundant. And you've got X amount of time to clear your belongings from your space and at your desk. I was working in purchasing, and purchasing is known for being a bit of a dog-eat-dog world and in the corporate world. And it was. So I was given that package, and in that moment, it feels like such a supreme kick to the gut that I can't even describe it as anything but what feels like a personal assault on your person and your character. Even though it's not, and it's just done in a strictly very clinical sense, and it's just, okay, we're going to sever this tie, and this position, this person is no longer needed. And that's when you realize that to the corporation, you are literally nothing but a number. And that hurts. It really freaking hurts. And yes, I did go through that in 2003. So in a different way than what typical retirement would be, right?
03, that was 23 years ago. So tell me if I'm correct with how you felt. Was that like, we're still like, well, I still got, like, I'm only in my 30s or my late 20s. I still got a ton of time to make up and choose a different thing. But if that was to happen today, how we look at life as such a shortened timeline, and a lot of us attach our identity to our jobs that we don't even know who we are. So can you take me through that situation happened to you in your late 20s or 30s versus late 40s into your 50s?
What a great way to frame it. I love that. And that's exactly what happened to me. And because I was younger, I had that time.
Mm-hmm.
The problem being now with people that I coach, they don't have that time. And
Mm-hmm.
if I'm being honest, it probably took me a good solid year of trying to figure out what it was that I wanted to do with my life. And I floated around and I floundered myself. And it's interesting that you actually even took me back there because I didn't know we were going there. So
Welcome to Xposed Living.
So no,
Unscripted.
This is perfect because that's exactly, and I'm actually having it crystallized for me in this moment. So thank you for that. But it's so interesting how things come around for you and they come full circle,
Mm-hmm.
because it wasn't until my husband retired, and that was in 2019, that the same thing happened for him, although his was a voluntary package that he took. But the same thing happened. He floundered and with less time.
Yeah.
Right? Because now he's older and he's got that less time, and he really struggled with the challenge of, well, what do I do with my life? At that time, and speaking for him, I've worked for this company for over 30 years now. My identity is so tied to what I do, and that's even how I introduce myself when I meet new people, right? Hey, I'm so and so, and this is what I do. And so it was a real challenge and a real struggle. In my case, I floundered and kind of like a fish out of water for a long time, until I even realized that it was in a completely different direction that I wanted to go. Corporate purchasing. And now look at what I do now. It's kind of on the human side of things. Not kind of, it is on the human side of things. But I went through being a healthcare aide, massage therapist, ultimately taking the life coach training and doing what I do now. So the people that I coach, they don't have that luxury of that expanded time frame to be able to go through all of those different chapters on their way to what I call purpose planning and deciding what it is that they're going to do with the rest of their life. And, I joke about it. It's like, okay, what do I want to be when I grow up? And you're typically not asking that question at 60 or older, but we should be.
Yeah. When you're talking about it with your husband, I was thinking, and then we're thinking about ageism. We're getting resentful because we've done this loyalty. A lot of people have stayed in jobs that they hate. They're like, I've given you all of this and you did this to me. That's right. And so it's this wake up call of, if you're staying in some place that you don't love right now, that is your decision.
Yep.
This is where, though, as Gen X, we need to rewrite some beliefs, because we saw our parents doing that same thing, not changing. How much emphasis was put on that piece of loyalty, as well as that piece of, well, once I'll retire, then I'll enjoy my life, versus seeing that journey. So you want to talk into there of how you help people maybe interrupt some of those beliefs to say, like, if you're not enjoying it now, good luck. You're not going to enjoy it when you retire.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a case of either peeling off the Band-Aid or ripping it off. And though it sounds painful, it's easier to rip it off and go with it, because the question that I always start with and ask people, do you know someone who waited until their retirement and they said that then they were going to travel, then they were going to do this, then they were going to start the business, then they were going to explore their hobby that they'd set aside for, usually at that point, 40 plus years while they raised their family, and with that corporation in that dead end job, and always saying, well, someday I'm going to do this, someday. And then someday comes, or it never comes. Mm-hmm. So like most of us can name somebody, or in my case, I can actually name quite a few people who waited until they retired to make that decision, and they were diagnosed with a critical illness, They sunk into depression because it wasn't what they had hoped for themselves, or worse yet, they actually passed before they even had a chance to explore what, retirement was that they had dreamed of for themselves. So that's where I always start with people, because everything in our lives always starts with awareness. Where are you right now? Where do you want to go? And most people don't even know. In that time frame, that's part of the problem, and that's the key part of the root of the problem that we want to get at, is you don't even know where you want to go because you've quit dreaming a long time ago. You may have had your hand up and saying, oh, I can't wait to get out of here, and I can't wait till they give me the package and I get my watch and my golden handshake. But then when that day actually comes, that's when you're like, and you're sitting there and your identity is it just feels like it's completely washed away. And you forget all of those dreams that you once had. So I take them back to that. And that's where we start.
And is this what you refer to as purpose planning?
It is. It's the beginning of purpose planning. Yeah. And I take them through what I call a mind mastery audit, which of course is an acronym in my case because I love acronyms. But the A is awareness. And that's the first step. Is like, okay, where are we now? And where do we want to be? And then the U is understanding. And understanding, and what you said, is how our core beliefs that we've been raised with and we've adopted and called our own actually play into what we live our lives out as. Because we don't even realize, again, it goes back to awareness, but awareness of our beliefs at this point. It's like, okay, what are my core beliefs? What do I believe in? And I also use the practical skill of EFT. So for your listeners, that's emotional freedom techniques, or as it's known, tapping. So yeah, you know it. But I use that as a practical tool and a resource for people to actually be able to move through identifying what their beliefs are, naming them, and then uprooting the ones that no longer serve you. Because in our group, in our demographic, the Gen X, blue collar, as you mentioned earlier, we've watched our parents go through this stretch of life, and we've seen them transition into this chapter, and we've adopted some of those limiting beliefs that they, unwittingly passed on to us, right? And so many of them are around money and your worth being tied to your profession or your job. And now who am I without that? So they go through this period in this stretch of, I don't know what to do with myself. And that looks like being lost on a daily basis, because for starters, your routine has been completely disrupted and you don't even know where to start. So we go through awareness and understanding, and then the D in audit is determination. So that's both determination of character, determination of your core values, determination of where you want to be, where you want to go. And then you can make deliberate decisions, which is the other kind of double D. And the I is imagination. So I take them back to that stage of dreaming again. And it's a very intentional, deliberate exercise that you have to go through, and you have to go through some visualization to be able to get there. And it's a practiced skill. If you can imagine, one of the hardest steps in a mind mastery audit is the I, the imagination, because we've put it to sleep for so many years that to be able to dream again is a real challenge at more mature years. We'll call it that. And then you integrate it, and then it becomes trusting the process and taking action. At least some action, no matter how big, no matter how small, but taking action.
I love that. It was beautiful. Honestly, I think a lot of our listeners can resonate that with whether they've retired or not. I found myself in that situation when coming up into 40. I think this is where people think that they're achieving this midlife crisis that we get, and never seeing it as actually, it is your intuition talking to you that there's more to do. I've shared this story in the past, is when somebody actually asked me, what do you want? I went into telling a story about my kids. like what I wanted for them. And they're like, not for your kids, for you. And I was like, holy shit, I don't know. I guess it is to retire. But then all I had to do was continue working and saving and everything. And it was in that moment through awareness that I realized the reason I'm feeling stuck is because I don't have a goal that's greater than what I know how to do. So there's no growth.
Yep.
And the intention of a goal is to grow, not to get. And somewhere along the lines, we've mixed this up. So if it wasn't something that I knew how to do, then I didn't think it was possible for me, because to your point, my imagination, like that muscle, had atrophied so much that I couldn't imagine more than what I knew how or could see from our physical world.
Oh, yes. Beautifully framed. And that's exactly what happens. It's atrophied and it needs to be woke back up, and it needs to be nurtured, and it needs practice.
And somewhere that's the belief that we're overriding as Gen X, is that imagining and fantasizing was make-believe. And yet everything in our 3D world started first in our imagination.
Yes.
And so, it goes back to those money paradigms. People want more money, but all they do is imagine lack and limitation, where you
100%.
can't get something that you don't believe in. There's this quote, and I love it. I think it fits in perfectly. It was one that somebody asked Van Gogh at one time, how do you paint such beautiful paintings? And he said, I dream my paintings and then I paint my dream.
I love
And
that quote.
right? And along the lines for so many of us Gen X is that we forgot to dream because we were told that is being not realistic.
Yep.
Right? Or careless.
Yep.
And all these things. But yet when we start to look back into our lives, we didn't achieve what we wanted without having some type of risk, without dreaming. But it was never brought to our awareness that that's how it was created.
Yeah. And I think we're getting there now in today's day and age. We're beginning to explore that again. And I also think it's a reawakening of something that we used to do quite naturally. I think in generations past, I think it's many generations past now, but we're finally starting to kind of, swing back that other way again. You know how the pendulum always swings too far one way or the other, and to such an extreme that we have to kind of, okay, let's bring it back, and let's integrate this back into our lives. Because I think what we're doing is actually just kind of uncovering and discovering again and remembering what once came so naturally to all of us. And as kids, like all you have to do is watch a little kid at play, one that doesn't have an iPad in front of their face.
I was just going to say.
But you have to watch a little kid at play with a tea towel around them, pretending to be a superhero. And it's like, hey, that kid's tapped in. That kid is tuned in and tapped in to exactly the power that we need to tap into again as adults.
Yeah. I'm curious to get your thoughts as it's like releasing the control, because we're all using our imagination, but we're often using it for what we don't want, because we can imagine the worst case scenario, but it's very tricky the way that how we've grown up to imagine the best scenario. And I always say both faith and fear require you to believe in the invisible.
Yep.
Why aren't we able to think more of why we can than why we can't? So in your experience in dealing, how do you help people with that? This sounds like great, but show me how it works.
Show me the money. And that's where you get back to the practical exercises again. You actually have to take it to the most basic level and first of all, discover what are your core values. And I know you and I have been doing this work, so we can probably name those. But if you take specifically men, which I coach with primarily, most men have never sat down and actually done an exercise to determine what their core values are. And if you were to ask them, they would think that they knew, but until you actually go through a practical exercise to determine what those goals are, or those values are, lots of times we actually don't know what our core values are. and myself included in that, because it's a really useful exercise to put yourself through every so often, to make sure that you're staying on course and you actually are staying true to your core values, because that's what makes decision making easier.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, either it does align or it doesn't. And if it
Right.
doesn't, it makes an easier no. And if it does, it makes an easier, hell yeah, I'm in and I'm full in. And then you can commit and then you can go for it. And I think it makes us more inclined to, oh, that's why this never resonated with me.
Yeah.
And then we go back to that awareness piece again. And it's like, huh. And it's just like, it's one of those,
Light bulb.
your mind explodes. And it's like, if I only knew all of those years ago that it could be this easy to start. So that's where it starts. It starts with core values, determining where those are. And again, where you are at in your life, along your line, your timeline. And it's like, okay, what do you still want to do?
Yeah.
What do you still want to do after the corporate world is like faded away and you're winding down from that? What dreams are still alive in you that you still want to actually explore?
I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. Do you believe that core values can change?
I think they don't actually change. I think they mature.
Okay.
One of my core values is dignity, and another one is fun.
Yeah.
So I infuse fun into even the most serious of my coaching conversations, even.
Yeah.
Because if you can't have fun, what's the point? Like that,
Why
and because
are you
that's
doing
how
it?
strongly I feel about having fun with things in my life. And because even as a little kid, being silly and having fun was kind of frowned upon. You had to be serious about everything you were doing. And I think I broke out of that, and it's like, okay, no, I need fun in my life in order to stay motivated and stay on top of the things that I do take seriously. So dignity and fun are my two kind of top core values. And dignity has always been, but it's framed in such a way, it's like, okay, in a certain setting, that might look like honesty. And honesty might be someone's core value. But for me, and the exercise that I take people through is one of which they take their core values, and it's like, okay, come up with 3 to 5 really key, strong words that are your core values that the other ones fit into as a container. So
Right.
dignity, it looks like transparency for me. It looks like honesty for me. It even looks like lifelong education, because they all pour into my core value of dignity. So to answer your question, it's a case of, I think they just mature. I think the core values themselves don't necessarily change. And at different points in your life, I think they kind of rise and fall in relation to the other ones.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. What's the difference you see in values versus beliefs?
Beliefs are I can or I can't in my world.
Okay.
That's what I do. And core
So
values,
belief of self.
yes. And what you believe, right or wrong, or true or false, but what you believe or perceive to be true of yourself.
Okay. I always have said, just because we've had a belief in the past doesn't mean it has to be true forever. And it could suit you in one span of your life, but maybe in this different season, it's not. And I think that's where you're leaning towards with values, is that being in your 30s and showing dignity and fun versus your 50s or your 60s and how you reframe that.
Yep.
But it was holding yourself to a standard.
It's your code of ethics. What you consider to be your code of ethics and what that is to you. So yes, and truly your core value matures with you, because yes, definitely in my 30s, the core value of dignity may have meant, well, I'm trying to think of an example, but in my 30s, I might have thought that was just being respectful of my elders in my 30s.
Right.
Dignity now in my 50s it aligns a lot more to do with allowing everyone that I meet to be whole and comfortable in their authentic aligned self, and me accepting of what that is for them,
Right.
not according to any kind of a container or a box that I've got labeled as authentic for me, but whatever is authentic to them.
Right.
Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
It does. And it comes with wisdom and awareness. So you can see it different ways, where I think what could trip people up is keeping the same definition of that core value throughout.
Yep.
And then saying, well, because they act that way, that was disrespectful to me, not recognizing that we all come with a different perspective on how that situation can be shared.
And that's where your beliefs come into it, because your beliefs act as a filter.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, if I believe that it's, wrong to do something in a certain way, then that's the filter that I have over, my view of the world, my perspective.
Yeah. So
and that
good.
Again goes back to me judging.
Right.
And
that's a huge lesson. I think another belief that Gen X had is that in order for me to feel a different way, I need somebody else to change on how they respond. Whereas I actually don't. They can act that way. Them doing something doesn't make me feel any way unless I choose to feel that way.
and unless I choose to allow it. Yes.
Yeah. So let's bring this into relationships. What actually shifts between partners in this season?
Things shift in the relationship because, for one, that whole routine has been disrupted. And in our case, there was no routine. There was no schedule. There was no dream. There was no vision for the future. There was no plan. And my husband is the perfect example of someone who wanted that retirement, had his hand up, got the package, and then went, I don't know what I'm going to do now. Like from morning to night, once he went through that honey-do list, as we tend to call it, and he got that done really quick because he's one of those people that can't sit still, which is why in the first place, I was worried for him when he took his package, because I was like, you need something to do, buddy, or you're going to go crazy. And he did. Like he would be standing at my door and it's like, hey, what you doing? You want a coffee? I'm like, sure. But what are you doing right now? Because you're interrupting my flow, my work, my day, my routine.
Right.
And so it really interfered with our relationship. And because he had always been this person who was very strong-willed, comfortable in his capabilities and his strengths and everything that he did, and that just vanished. And he didn't have the water cooler talk every morning. He didn't have the conversations with people that were saying, hey, good job. And as much as we like to think that we don't need that external validation, we do to some extent. We need to know that we matter, and it needs to be validated in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. And I wasn't giving that to him when he was home all of the time. Right. So yes, he still remained this strong individual in his own right, and he was still highly capable, but he didn't know what to do with the capabilities and talents and skills that he had, and he was lost.
So if somebody finds themselves in a similar situation, is it the audit that you recommend, or what is something that they could do today to start designing a life that they they choose?
Yes, absolutely. But the very first thing is to go through that exercise. And I go through that like no charge at all, because I feel it's so important that people have that in their life, because at least then they know they're standing on firm ground and they can make some decisions from there. Because if you're just drifting, you become the world's plaything. Yeah. And you're like this balloon that's just untethered, and you're floating around, and then whatever flavor of the day is a popular thing. It's like somebody says to you, hey, you should try da-da-da. It's like, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and you don't even think about it, and you don't put thought into it, and you become this and then you realize after the fact, too late, and this wasted time, I call it wasted, but you always
Mm-hmm.
learn something. But
Yeah.
after this time, when you could have actually been doing something that really fed your soul,
Yeah.
and then you realize later on afterwards, it's like, that really wasn't for me. I just let somebody else kind of push me into something that I thought I might be good at because they
Right.
said so. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
I really think this is where we become a victim of our circumstances, right?
yeah, and we become, if we are untethered and just floating in a victim of our circumstances, then we're more likely to let all of that other external garbage in, and that
Yeah.
crap, that shit.
Yeah.
We just let it in, and we don't filter it out, and we don't do this and say, nope, not today, Satan, I'm not accepting that.
Yeah. Well, and I love it because it goes back to why you described why those core values are important. Because if not, then you're saying no to everything or yes to everything or the wrong way about it, right? Because you don't have a standard. You think you have a standard, but the standard has become, and I think for women doing this is where we really go into that people pleasing. And for men with the habits is sometimes even retracting a little bit more and feeling isolated.
And with men, more so a case of not exploring what they could possibly be good at, because they retract into what they know.
Yeah.
They retract into what they've done before. And it's only a case of, well, I already know that I'm good at this. So this is what I'm going to do. And then they retract and they become small, and then eventually become a little bit resentful because they're not expanding, they're not growing, and they're not exploring those things. And they've suppressed that to such an extent that it's hard to not become a little bit bitter about it.
Tracey, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, how do they find you?
I am on all the socials as Master Your Mindset with Coach T. And if you're looking for me by name, it's Tracey Thomson without a P, Thomson. And that's where I'm on LinkedIn, is just Tracey Thomson, but as Tracey Thomson, not as Coach
Tracey Thomson.
Yeah, but Master Your Mindset with Coach T on all the socials. And that's
amazing. Oh, Master Your Mindset is your website as well?
Master Your Mindset with Coach T, yeah.
Okay, beautiful. And I'll have all of that information in the show notes. So if you're hearing this right now, make sure you check out the show notes. We end these with some getting to know Tracey and some rapid fire ageless types of questions. Are you ready to rock?
Oh, hit me. The universal answer is 13. I'll warn you right now.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's go.
Retire or reinvent?
Reinvent.
Awesome. Routine or freedom?
Freedom.
Security or purpose?
Purpose.
Can you have both?
Yes.
I love that. Yes, of course you can. What's one thing Gen X needs to stop believing?
Oh, that they're washed up by the age of 40 if they haven't hit their groove. I think that's one of the big ones that they come up against. It's like, okay, or any age for that matter, but 40 is the one that seems to hit the hardest. But it's like, okay, if I haven't already hit my groove by age 40, I'm washed up. No. Hell no.
Hell no. You know, what's one thing on the reverse side that Gen X needs to start doing immediately?
Well, the easy answer here is imagining and dreaming, but taking the steps in order to be able to do that, rather than accepting that, oh, this is my lot in life and this is all there is.
And in this stage in your life, Tracey, what does living exposed mean to you?
I think overcoming the belief that I've failed if I make a mistake in front of people. Because that was a big one for me too. And I'm still working on it, because I think we all like to look like we know what we're doing in front of people.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes being real and being vulnerable is a far better route to take, because I've really been challenged with overcoming looking what I feel is looking stupid in front of other people and looking like I have failed. And that's a big one for me. So yeah, personally, I think that's it for me.
Do you have any tips on that? It's fairly common, that one, but is there something that you've done that is really, you find, been able to help you move the needle on that one?
Bring humor into it. It's like, well, I screwed up again. Like, just bring humor into it, because everybody loves to laugh at somebody's mistake.
Yeah.
So bring some humor into it. And then again, that just goes back to my core value of having fun with life in general. But I really think it disarms everyone if you're able to laugh at yourself. And, you know, in the moment, it sometimes can be hard to do, because you're just like, oh, that was the dumbest thing I ever could have done. And if you actually just say that, and it's like, well, that's a new mistake, or like, just have fun with it and go with the flow and bring humor into it, because it's the most disarming thing that I know of.
I love that definition of exposed living. It is really around, like, life doesn't need to be taken too seriously. You said it earlier, something that I wanted, is that, like, I think we think it has to be so complicated. And yet it's through that complexity that things become not fun, or that we put more pressure on ourselves than we need to have pressure on it. And that if we can take ourselves as those times as just something to learn, and then it doesn't define us, it's just opens up a whole new realm of it.
100%.
Share with me one last thought that you have around, if you were to help somebody, and when you help somebody really move from feeling stuck to living a life that they love, what would you say to them that's possible for them?
I would say explore the things that you think you know, and be willing to be a beginner at something. No matter how big, no matter how small, but be willing to learn something, and be willing to accept the fact that, you know what, I could be wrong about this. What would open up for you if you just sat back and thought, maybe I'm wrong? And that's kind of where it all begins. It's like, okay, maybe what I've always thought to be true isn't. Or maybe it's not as true for me anymore.
Yeah, that just because I've had a belief in the past doesn't make it true. Bob would always say the only problem that we'll all ever have is ignorance, of not knowing, right? And so how could I see this in a world of infinite possibilities? How could I look at this from a different lens?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, so good. Thank you. I think what stands out in this conversation is we've spent decades building a life, but almost no one teaches us how to live it when structure changes. And that's where people get lost. Sometimes, as Tracey's gone on and shared today, not because they don't have anything left, but because they haven't decided who and what they want to be next. Here's what I keep coming back to. This conversation wasn't about retirement. It's about identity, about getting to know yourself. Because there's a moment, especially in this phase of life, where everything can look good on the outside, but inside something feels off. If you're one of those people, please check the show notes, find Tracey, do the work, because I tell you what, the work works when you do the work. And if not, we can just keep sticking in that loop. And that doesn't, when we want more, I think this is another belief us Gen X have to override. It doesn't mean that we're being ungrateful. We can have an incredible life and still want more. It makes us aware, and awareness is where everything changes. Because when rules shift, routines change, titles fall away. And if you don't know who you are beyond that title, you start to question everything. So what I want people to hear today, Tracey, and I thank you because you've said it so many times and so well, is you don't lose relevance in this chapter. You lose it when you stop choosing it. Midlife isn't the time to drift. It's the time to decide. As Tracey says, it's the time to design. And if something hits you in this conversation, good. That's your cue. Reach out. We're here to support you. And until then, stay bold, be exposed. And thank you, my friend, for joining us today on Xposed Living.
That's it for today's episode of Xposed Living, Be Ageless. But this is just the beginning. If this episode made you feel something, share it. Tag me. Send it to a friend. Let's start the conversation we can be having all along. No shame, no guilt. Unfiltered, raw, real, exposed. And if you're ready to go deeper, join us inside the Xposed Living Facebook community, where we take this work off the podcast and into real life. Know this, your change starts when your excuses die. Because this life, this one wild, ageless, unforgettable life is waiting on you. This is your time. This is your truth. This is Xposed Living.